Okay, I'm going to talk about why pop culture franchises fail, and I'm going to talk about why pop culture franchises succeed.
I'm going to tell you why films fail, I'm going to tell you why films succeed, and I'm going to tell you about this one right here, Northwestern.
Doom Eternal is going to be the topic of today's video because, well, isn't it obvious? So anyway, Doom Eternal is a successful video game, and I wanted to sort of talk about why. Obviously, the systems, the game mechanics, and all of that works very well, and the gameplay is why, first and foremost, why people keep playing the game is because of its addictive gameplay, just like the original Doom and Doom 2, but I think there's something more there. There's a reason why people like Midnight blow up with all of these lore videos, and I think it's because of the attitude of Doom Eternal, and how Doom Eternal is influenced by not really Doom. It really isn't influenced much by Doom, it's more influenced by things like Star Wars. It has a lot of high fantasy elements like, Star Wars, and it has a lot of horror influences like The Thing, and a lot of Carpenter influence actually, like They Live. There's Terminator, references, there's Saturday morning cartoon references, there's Iron Maiden references. Doom Eternal is influenced by, a number of things that Hugo Martin and, the team like, and the pop culture that they consume. And I feel like this is important when continuing and rebooting a pop culture franchise like Doom, or anything else, like Star Wars, or Terminator, or anything like that. One of the reasons why Star Wars the sequel trilogy didn't work, well, because they didn't have no plan, first of all, but second of all, I think the sequel trilogy didn't work because they were influenced by Star Wars. They weren't influenced by the works that influenced George Lucas back in the day. And with The Mandalorian, for example, a property that people really like, a series that people have really, clung onto, I think at the core of it, people like The Mandalorian because it's influenced by not really Star Wars, but more so the stuff that Star Wars was influenced by. The westerns from back in the day, the serials, the, Flash Gordon serials, the spaghetti westerns. That's what Mandalorian is influenced off of, and that's how it works. Same thing with Doom if we apply it to that franchise. Doom Eternal is inspired by Saturday morning cartoons, heavy metal albums, different movies here and there. And I feel like it's not directly inspired by Doom. Obviously there's homages, and obviously from a gameplay perspective, Doom Eternal is heavily influenced by Doom's weapon meta, the original Doom's weapon meta, and I've made videos on that, I've covered that in the past. Like, it's not that different to the original Doom, it's just a more evolved version of that in 2020 with different systems and more updated mechanics and things. But anyway, back to the actual sort of lore and story aspect of it, there's a reason why people like Midnight have blown up, and that's because the lore, people are attached to Doom Eternal's lore. And I'm mildly interested in it, to be honest. I mean, I'm kind of mildly interested in, like, any lore. Like, I'm not the type of person that would fucking, like, go to the Star Wars Wikipedia page and just start looking up, like, oh, what metal is, this ship made out of? I don't really care about that kind of stuff. But I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people geek out over that stuff, which is cool, and I like Star Wars. I geek out over different parts of Star Wars or whatever. That's totally fine, it just depends on what you're into, but some people really like the lore and that sort of, like, deep dive into, like, what is this made out of? What is that made out of? Etc. etc. Who was that guy? Who's his entire backstory? What's his entire backstory? Whatever. Doom Eternal kind of does the same thing, and people are interested in that. And why is that? Like, why does Doom have a dedicated fan base that enjoys the lore? And the reason why is because Doom Eternal is not directly inspired by Doom. I mean, it is in terms of the gameplay, but story-wise, it stands on its own 2 feet. Doom, the original Doom, is very much like Aliens with demons. That's basically what Doom is. It's just the movie Aliens, but with demons. That's basically it. And of course, you know, we have like Daisy, the bunny rabbit, etc. And it has a lot of personality, you know, in between that, like the text messages in the intermission screens and shit. Like that is where the personality shines in Doom, the original. But it's basically aliens with, you know, demons from hell. And with Doom Eternal, it's very different. And that's good. They should evolve that into something different. It has very, like, fantasy elements. Like, you have the Sentinels, you have, like, the Night Sentinels, and you have the Makers and stuff, and then there's, like, been civil wars and stuff. Like, the lore in Doom Eternal, I'm not saying it's, like, the best thing in the world, but it's, you know, not bad from what I've seen. It is a little convoluted, to be fair, to get into, but the people that like it really seem to dig it. But anyway, there's a lot of fantasy elements which wasn't there in the original Doom, and that's why people like it. They like that Doom Eternal evolved sort of the influences, and Doom Eternal has its own influences. Doom Eternal is not directly inspired by Doom. Not necessarily, like story-wise at least. It stands on its own 2 feet. And while Doom Eternal is influenced by similar things that that the original Doom is inspired by, like, you know, Pantera, Metallica, Iron Maiden, like there's a lot of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, like cover art, like influence in Doom Eternal. I feel like a successful reboot of a franchise, of a beloved pop culture franchise, needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and the reason why the Mandalorian works, for example, is because, like I said, they were inspired by not Star Wars. They were inspired by actual things besides Star Wars. Because if you are inspired by Star Wars when making Star Wars, you end up with Star Wars, which is good. Like The Force Awakens is inspired by Star Wars, but it doesn't, stand on its own 2 feet at all. Like, it just doesn't. So if Doom Eternal was just rehashing Doom, the original Doom, it won't stand on its own 2 feet. But now, with Doom Eternal, it does stand on its own 2 feet, and we can see, like, future games cover all of these different aspects of the lore, like the Makers, the Night Sentinels, the Wraiths, etc. So that's cool to see. I never thought we would get into a place where we were talking about Doom fucking lore in 2021. That is insane. Like, Doom to me is all about just guns and just going crazy. Demons and guns. But now we have like this fleshed out lore, and we see people like Midnight, make careers, YouTube careers off of just talking about the lore, which is awesome, and that should be celebrated. And I think all of that is possible because New Blood went into id Software, not New Blood the studio, but you know what I mean, like new developer blood went into the studio, new people went into it, like Hugo Martin, and they have like a fresh vision. They're inspired by different things other than Doom. Like, they're inspired by Saturday morning cartoons, they're inspired by Disney, they're inspired by Carpenter, they're inspired by Star Wars, all of these different things. Doom Eternal kind of reminds me of Quake. Like, Quake is just a mishmash of ideas that they just thought of like last second, and it all kind of works in my opinion, and so does Doom Eternal, and it all just comes together. But yeah, anyway, I've rambled long enough. What do you think about Doom Eternal standing on its own 2 feet, and what do you think of that sort of idea that, like, do you think that a reboot of a beloved property should be should it be influenced by what came before, or should it try to stand on its own 2 feet, and how? I think how it stands on its own 2 feet is basically by, being inspired by other stuff, Mandalorian was good because it was inspired by not Star Wars. Doom Eternal is good because it's not directly and fucking inspired by Doom, it's inspired by different things, and that makes things, one, fresh, and two, it can withstand, the test of time now. Obviously, you will have a voice in the comment section down below. I might be just chatting shit, but I want to hear what you guys have to think. I was just thinking about, like, why do people care about Doom Eternal lore now? Why do people care about Doom and lore? I mean, a lot of people don't, but some people do, and I want to know why that resonates. And what part about that, works, and why do you come back to the lore? What fascinates you? Is it the personality? Because Doom has a lot, all id games, I should say, has have a lot of personality. The one with the least amount of personality is probably Quake 2. I don't really like that game. Like, it's good, but it's not, I don't know, Quake 2 is whatever. Anyway, Most of the time, id Software just get inspired by stuff like medieval sort of concepts, or like with Doom at least, aliens, and with Wolfenstein, like, old World War II movies. They get influenced by an idea and they just go off the rails, and they have that little id Software charm. So, with that said, what do you think works about Doom Eternal lore, if you're into it? If you're not, I would love to hear why you're not into it and what doesn't resonate with you. For me, it's just, I just need to invest myself into it, and I want to get into Doom Eternal lore, but I just, I haven't found the time or whatever. I mean, that's a shitty excuse. It's not been on my mind. But anyway, that being said, please make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more Doom content and more FPS content. I usually talk about 90s FPS stuff. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.